Now, it's more than 20 years since the Macpherson inquiry commissioned after the death of Stephen Lawrence declared that the Metropolitan Police was institutionally racist. Last summer, in the wake of the Black Lives Matter protests, Scotland Yard's Commissioner Cressida Dick told this programme the label no longer applied. Tonight, though, the most senior Asian woman in the force until she quit last year told us she disagrees. She was the most senior female ethnic minority officer in the Metropolitan Police, who during a career of more than 30 years rose to become a superintendent. Now Nusrit Mehtab is suing Scotland Yard for sex, race and religious discrimination. In papers submitted to an employment tribunal to be heard next year, she alleges that decades of discrimination made the workplace a hostile environment for her and other ethnic minority officers. Last year, Scotland Yard's Commissioner Cressida Dick told this programme the Met was no longer institutionally racist.
I think it is a contested definition. I think it means all sorts of things to different people. I don't think it's helpful.
In her first interview since she quit last year, Ms Mehtab begs to differ. She began by describing how a picture of an Asian colleague was defaced at Haringey Police Station in 2018.
The photos of my fellow Muslim superintendent were repeatedly defaced with offensive graffiti on the notice board, and there were photos of other white officers that weren't touched. I actually spoke to my colleague and told him, and I was verbally reprimanded for that. He was targeted, but it wasn't investigated.
So that was a few months before the swastika was found. Tell us what happened with that.
On the day of the swastika, I was actually at Edmonton Police Station for an early morning meeting, and I became aware of the swastika. So I called a meeting with the Chief Superintendent with the view to work out a strategy for our command on how we were going to deal with this racism issue. But I wasn't really prepared for the reaction that I got, because I was just shut down immediately. And I was told in no uncertain terms that I couldn't talk about it, I couldn't discuss it with anybody.
When you take all these incidents together, what was the cumulative effect of all of that on you?
It was frustrating because, you know, every day was just a battle. Battle to be treated fairly, battle for your voice to be heard. And you get to a point where, as a human being, you have a limit. When you're trying to do the right thing, but you're continuously reprimanded or you're stopped, and you just don't understand why that happens.
And so you're claiming constructive dismissal, which the Met is vigorously contesting. Just sum up, if you can, how you believe that your chances of promotion were scuppered because of sexism and racism.
I would describe my journey as a battle at every rank. And I don't believe that my journey is any different to the majority of my Black, Asian, minority ethnic colleagues. I don't know if you've ever seen the programme The Gladiators, where the contestant has to get past all these gladiators just to get to the finish line. I would say that I've had to push past invisible gladiators at every rank just to get to the assessment centre. What happens is when promotion season starts, the mutual networks, the more established networks, such as the Old Boys Network, the White Female Clique, they all mobilise sympathetic assessors into the assessment centres to get their candidates through. It's not based on ability and it's not based on racial equality.
What was the final straw for you? When did you decide you had to quit?
I would say that the last 2 years, my working environment was becoming increasingly hostile. It was toxic. I was getting out of bed in the morning and I'd be filled with dread at what retaliatory action that I was going to face. And then when I was getting to work, I was just looking over my shoulder on eggshells. I'm proud that I was a police officer, but that doesn't mean that I can be discriminated against or the Equalities Act breached.
I mean, it's obviously still so upsetting for you. What toll would you say this has taken on you and your life?
I actually saw how the organisation treated my fellow Black and Asian superintendent ranks, and I saw how the organisation literally went after them one by one. There was genuine fear, and the perception was it could be any one of us next. Not because we'd done anything wrong, but because the reality is that if you're Black, Asian, minority, ethnic, officer or staff, you face greater scrutiny and disproportionality in terms of the misconduct process. And I believed and I hoped that the change would come. But for me, it didn't. Things are better. The organisation has changed, but it's still institutionally racist and not enough. Well, a lot more needs to be done.
Well, it's interesting to hear you use that description because the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Cressida Dick, says that she believes the Met has come a very, very, very long way since the Macpherson report. And she quibbles with the term institutionally racist and says it means something different to different people, and that everybody knows that Scotland Yard has, quote, zero tolerance of racism. What do you say to her comments?
There's inexplicable disproportionality in recruitment, in retention, in misconduct, and the lack of promotion. I would say that's racism, that's institutional racism, that's structural bias. 21 years after Macpherson, she still says the organisation is an institutional racism and it's not a helpful term. What's not helpful is her continuous denial and her willful blindness.
What needs to change? Because the Met now has this target, 40% of recruits from Black, Asian or minority ethnic backgrounds. Is that going to make the change?
I do welcome it if it can be achieved, because to bring about change, and if the communities of London want to see police officers that look like them and look like me, then they have to join. The Commissioner needs to go. She's damaged policing legitimacy. Confidence is at the lowest, and she's created tribalism. But it is more than just changing the player, it's about changing the game. And by that I mean the narrative's got to change. You've got to admit that there's institutional racism, and then we can move on.
Nusrit Mehtab, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you, Cathy, for giving me the opportunity to do that. It was a pleasure.
Well, in response tonight, the Metropolitan Police said it would be inappropriate to comment in any detail about the claims at this time ahead of an employment tribunal. They went on to say the Met is a place where Black, Asian and minority ethnic Londoners can and do thrive, and one where there is no tolerance for discrimination or victimisation. They actively encourage all officers and staff to challenge any such behaviour and report it, so it can be dealt with appropriately and those affected by it can be fully supported.